a more realistic model which shows the fractality of the market, very similar to what we saw before, that formation of higher lows and higher highs. After understanding and looking at this fractality, it can become very confusing because they will show you this perfect model. However, it's very rare that you see price follow this scenario. So in this video, I will give you the concepts that will allow you to identify and follow the market structure and not be left confused whether it's going to be a bearish market sentiment or a bullish market sentiment. I will give you guys rules that will increase your probability and higher your chance of actually being on the right side of the market. Now, the next concept I have to introduce you guys to is the false change of character / market structure shift. Whether you trade SMC, as you see, this still applies to your area of knowledge. What happens is, it's very similar to the previous model I showed you of the false breaker structure, this being the false breaker structure and then price breaks that low. However, it targets both the buyers and the sellers. This is why this is such a powerful model, because price sweeps liquidity from both sellers and buyers at the same time. That's why you have to position yourself in the best position to not fall into these traps. Now, with the false change of character, what we would notice is that price is maybe retracing off a higher time frame, POI, okay? So price is just tapped into whether your 4-hour or your daily supplies on a higher time frame, and it has given the reaction of it breaking a low. Okay, this break of this low is what usually is the high confirmation to people that we are now completely just going to change the entire market sentiment just because price has tapped into the zone and broken this low. Now, you also have to understand, prior to this, you'd see that there was very aggressive bullish market structure leading up to this, right? Do you believe that this one supply zone would be the main catalyst of changing the entire upthrust that was been building up? So all the money that's been accumulating from people buying at this area, do you think it will be simply just shifted away because price just came into the supply zone? This supply zone may not hold enough power for it to completely shift the entire market, and that's what you usually see. Maybe it might give you a strong reaction, but price will then come into the demand zone that is continuing this bullish structure, sort of come into the supply zone right here, and this is where the inducement, now the supplies start to accumulate. People see this, they maybe see a lower time frame, change the character once again, and then they'll enter their position, and then price is completely going against them and takes them out their trade. And then it continues to take out this high. Now, that is also one of the main reasons why a lot of small money concept traders or ICT traders are still unprofitable. But I want you to understand, price making a complete reversal is highly less probable than price continuing the momentum that it's been having for the past prior days. Now, how do we identify a false change of character from a real one? Now, if price were to not only break this initial low, but also seek to break the secondary low, this is where we can now start to assume that this change of character could be the reversal or the shift in market trend. Now, let me introduce you to the strong highs and the strong lows and how to confirm one. We're going to be using the mix of the previous concepts that I just introduced you guys to, the false change of character and the false breaker structure. Now, I want you to draw your eyes to this high right over here. The reason why I mentioned this as a strong high is because look what I did prior to actually making this high, okay? It actually took out this previous structure point, okay, which is to be assumed as a breaker structure, okay? We would assume that this would be a breaker structure, and then people are also assuming that this would be the area that they would enter their supply zones. But as you can see, price then fills that area. This is now a false breaker structure, and then once price breaks this high, it also becomes a false change of character. Now you see how the two concepts are intertwining together. Once price breaks this structural point and then pushes down to the downside, making a breaker structure, we can confirm this as a strong high. Why? Because it took out liquidity. The only thing, the denominator that makes any strong high or strong low is the sweep of any sort of liquidity, whether that be the session liquidity, whether that be equal highs or equal lows. But the strongest one are these false change characters, because as I said before, these are smart money / ICT traps, okay? This is how they get them, and seeing this sweep of liquidity will allow us to be on the right side of the market, okay? So Once we identify this was a false change of character and our false break structure over here, okay, we also understand that people were looking to sell here, they got swept out, okay? So we can now look for any supply zones within this leg, okay? Not this leg over here, okay? Not this leg. We're looking for that premium zone. Remember, as I said, if this little retracement here does not retrace into at least the 50% of this high and low, as you can see, it just comes to the A2. So we can confirm this as a inducement high, okay? Okay, and we can see price sort of just pushes off here, okay? This is just me also showing and demonstrating to you guys how the market usually moves. You want to see prices quickly take out this high. They usually give up a bit of reaction, okay? Because what this reaction does now, it will also get in other buyers at this. So people maybe see that maybe there has been a higher time POI here, and then they'll be looking to enter our here, okay? And then now what will happen is people that were selling at this zone, they get completely swept out, okay? By this strong high over here, okay? And people who had their buys here looking to target maybe this high over here, you eventually see that they also get swept out, okay? But you, the person that understands the intricacies of this market, will look and see, okay, no, this is a strong high. So I'll look for my supply zone in here, and then you'd find your entry within an area like this, or looking for that lower time frame shift, and then you'd target lower, okay? And then you'd profit this position, having the understanding of a strong high and low. Now let's focus on this setup on GPCHF. As we can see, price has broken structure, okay? We can see we now have this low and this high. Now what makes this a strong low is the fact that we swept out liquidity from the previous session, from this low and from this low, okay? So this makes us a strong low already. So we want to be focusing, our focus would want to be on this main leg right over here, okay? We don't want to worry about what's happening over here, okay? We want to focus on this strong low and the leg that I created. So an order block like this is of high probability, but other traders would now want to be focusing on what happens next. Price dips down below and then gives us a new break structure. This to them would be the continuation of price. So they'd be focusing on zones right over here, okay? So now able to flip up from this low to this high, okay? From this low to this high, we can see that price is not reached anywhere close to the discount of the zone. Even going further, we haven't even reached the equilibrium. So this low right over here stands a high probability and a high chance of being an inducement low. And this also stands a higher probability and high chance of being a false breaker structure, okay? Now what does price do? It comes down, and you can see maybe had an all back here. Price also gives you a change of character, and then you maybe target, okay, right over here. Cool. Price follows this, okay? Now, but I want your focus to be right over here, okay? Because look what price does. Price then continues this sort of movement. As you can see, then we start to consolidate. But later on in the market, we then identify that everything that was created right over here was all part of manipulation. This was all a ruse to get people to start buying right over here, because the main move that carried price all the way upwards for the main traders would have been right over here. So if you were waiting, you're probably going to enter right over here, have your stop loss a few pips below that low, and then you'd be targeting maybe that prior high, or even all the way to target this main high, okay? That's what you'd be maybe looking for. But the traders will focus only on this order block or zones that were created here, and they went to look for that change of character. They would have had the entry over here, a few pips below there, targeting the same area, and they would have got swept out the trade. Okay, so guys, I hope this gave you guys more insight into how to understand the reason behind most of your losses. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys can see your change of characters and how they end up making you lose. A lot of people can see their break structure, how they end up making them lose. If you guys also understand the market model that goes in hand with this market approach, you can watch this video right over here where I talk about high probability order blocks and how you identify them so you can get into better